After suffering a stroke and becoming paralyzed on my right side, I ended up living with my son Leonard and his wife Sherry following my discharge from the hospital.
Hey! We're here! Get out!
One day, I was invited for a drive and taken out in the car. However, the destination turned out to be a deserted parking lot with only an old temporary toilet.
I don't need the bathroom, so I'll just wait here.
But it seemed they didn't hear me, or didn't care, as they silently dragged me out of the car. The atmosphere between them was so odd at that moment, I was petrified with fear. Trembling all over, I couldn't even stand as they looked down at me with scornful smiles. Then Sherry, picking up my cane that I had dropped, threw it off a cliff into the sea with all her might.
Wait a minute! Really?
The cane spiraled down, quickly sinking into the sea below. I had no idea what was happening, just staring blankly ahead at the cliff's edge.
Happy birthday! It's almost your birthday, so here's a surprise gift.
Leonard and Sherry burst into laughter. Then,
make sure you're back by dinner time,
they said before getting in the car and driving away. What on earth did I ever do to those two? Would it be easier to just throw myself off the cliff? I was overwhelmed with tears at my utterly miserable situation. My name is Anita. A perfectly ordinary housewife who got married and had kids in her early 20s. My children are Leonard and my daughter Elsa. Both grew up healthy and well. But Leonard was a bit too unrestrained. Because of that, both my husband and I struggled a lot raising him. The moment you looked away, he'd climb trees or fences, trespassing to eat berries or trample crops while catching bugs. He'd forcefully take his friends' toys, almost always ending up breaking them. Every time Leonard caused trouble, we were chased down for apologies and compensations. Once Leonard started elementary school, the teacher would call almost weekly, scheduling special meetings or asking us to accompany him to and from school. Fortunately, being a housewife, I thought it better than him getting into trouble, hoping he'd settle down as he grew, so I complied. Thanks to that, he managed to get through elementary school without major issues, but the trouble continued when he played with friends in the evenings. As he moved up to higher grades in elementary school, and then on to middle and high school, his problematic behaviors increased, especially out of our sight. High school was particularly bad. Night outs, unauthorized overnights, conflicts with students from other schools, and even police incidents were not uncommon. When Leonard wasn't home, I couldn't sleep at night, worrying he might be getting into trouble somewhere. Despite all the problems, fortunately, Leonard never committed any crimes and somehow managed to graduate high school. After graduation, he didn't go to college but worked part-time jobs for a while. Both my husband and I were quite worried he might never settle into a steady job, but luckily, the manager at his part-time job took a liking to his work ethic and offered him a full-time position at a gas station. With this opportunity, Leonard turned over a new leaf, becoming more responsible and causing far fewer problems. Eventually, at 33, he moved out to live with Sherry, who was then still his girlfriend, achieving independence. My husband and I were deeply grateful to the manager and Sherry, feeling relieved that our long years of parenting struggles were finally over. On the other hand, Elsa, who is 6 years younger than Leonard, was the complete opposite. While my husband and I were busy dealing with Leonard, she would quietly spend her time drawing or reading picture books. When I was feeling overwhelmed by parenting, she would come to comfort me in her own way. Even when I felt like a failure and wanted to give up, Elsa's kindness motivated me to keep going for her sake. Elsa was truly my pillar of support. As she became a teenager, Elsa did start to experience some nightlife. My husband was very worried, but I wasn't as concerned. Because Elsa always made sure to stay in touch, unlike Leonard, whose whereabouts were often unknown. Even when she went to college and chose dormitory life, she frequently called or came home to visit. And when she started working and living on her own, she continued to keep in touch just the same. Looking back, she probably kept in contact to make sure we weren't having trouble with Leonard, who was still living at home at the time. Elsa was always so considerate, which is probably why she found a partner so quickly. Her partner was James, her boss at the company. After dating for about 2 years, they got married following James's job transfer. They moved away 4 months after their wedding. Although she calls as much as she used to, the distance makes frequent visits home too difficult, so we only see Elsa a few times a year now. Learning this was bittersweet, happy for her marriage, but sad about her moving far away. However, I didn't want to interfere with her life, so I silently prayed for their happiness from afar. Leonard, who had moved out saying he was going to live with Sherry, lived about an hour's drive from our home but hardly ever contacted us. We only saw him during long holidays. And even then, it felt more like he came to eat good food or stay at our house just to enjoy his vacation, making us feel like servants. Still, I was content knowing he had become independent and responsible, always welcoming him warmly. As they each led their separate lives, I found myself enjoying a quiet life with my husband for the first time in decades, thinking how grandchildren would surely add more joy. Around that time, my husband collapsed in the changing room and passed away, the cause being a stroke due to heat shock. Our old house becomes extremely cold in the changing room during winter. I was aware of the risk of heat shock from TV and used a fan heater as a precaution. However, for some reason, the fan heater wasn't working that day. As a result, a sudden change in temperature occurred between the changing room and the shower room, leading to a stroke. By the time I found him, he was already unconscious, and he never returned to us. Later, the police informed me it was an accident with no foul play involved. I asked them why the fan heater hadn't been on. It wasn't that I thought it was significant, but I was puzzled since the heater wasn't broken. The police suggested that forgetting to turn on the power was likely the cause of the accident. It's easy to think you've done something out of daily routine, they explained. I understood their explanation, but I couldn't help wondering how I could forget to turn it on when it makes noise. However, dwelling on such thoughts wouldn't change anything. To organize my thoughts, I decided to sort through my husband's belongings. I thought it would be straightforward, but as I started, I kept picturing my husband lying there, which made me burst into tears repeatedly. I also couldn't stop blaming myself for not noticing the heater issue, making no progress. I was probably in a state of depression at that time. Once again, Elsa was there to support me. Right after my husband passed away, Elsa took time off work to visit me multiple times. "Hey, Mom. You don't have to push yourself to sort his things right now. We have plenty of time. Oh, look at this photo. It brings back memories, doesn't it?" Elsa always stayed by my side, trying to distract me from my immersion in sorting through everything, always with a smile. Thanks to Elsa, I didn't lose myself and came to accept my husband's death as a tragic accident. Years have passed since then, and I still live alone in our memory-filled home. To be honest, living alone in such a big house feels incredibly lonely. But I'm too old to be whimsical, so I've resigned myself to stay quiet. Then, one day, I suffered a stroke and was hospitalized. The cause was heat shock again. Despite my previous doubts about forgetting to turn on the appliance, I never imagined I would actually forget it myself. Fortunately, because the season was different from my husband's time, my life was not in danger. However, being alone meant it took a long time before an ambulance was called. As a result, I ended up with a severe disability, paralysis on my right side. I was scheduled for a long hospital stay for brain surgery and rehabilitation. I asked Leonard, who lives near our family home, to bring me the things I needed for my hospital stay.
Hospitalization? For how long? I mean, I'd like to help, but I've got work, you know?
I'm not sure exactly, but I think it's going to be quite a long stay. Could you at least prepare and bring me a hospital set? Please, Leonard.
Well, if I find some free time, I'll help.
Take care, then. With that, Leonard unilaterally ended the call. I sighed deeply, still clutching the phone receiver.
If I find some free time,
is Leonard's go-to excuse for declining. Once he says that, it's almost certain he won't do anything. Still, I didn't give up and kept contacting him. I understood Leonard's situation, but since I couldn't leave the hospital, asking for his help was my only option. A week after reaching out, Leonard finally took action. Thank you, Leonard. This really means a lot to me.
Hey, Mom. Is your illness really that bad?
Eh? Well, yes. It seems there's no prospect of recovery. But don't worry. I'll make sure not to be a burden on you. Is that so? Seeing Leonard ponder solemnly was unusual and made me feel a bit uneasy. Considering he had shown annoyance even when my husband passed away, it seemed unlikely he'd be so concerned about me. Even after Leonard left, I pondered why he had looked so solemn. Then, noticing a patient in a wheelchair on a stroll, I suddenly realized. Could it be he's worried about having to take care of me? This conclusion felt strangely fitting, and I was convinced it was correct. From then on, I started thinking about how to live without being a burden on Leonard and Elsa. Depending on the outcome of the rehabilitation, it's almost certain I'll need care. It might be more reassuring to enter a facility. The issues are the cost and what to do with the house. For now, the first step is rehabilitation. If I work hard in rehab and manage to regain some movement in my right side, it should make life significantly easier. That would hopefully reduce the cost of care a bit. Still, knowing that wouldn't be enough, I planned to discuss the house the next time someone visited. Next time might be in 2 or 3 months, so I had plenty of time to think. The following day, Leonard and Sherry came to visit together. They had never come unless it suited their interests, so why the sudden change? Perhaps they were worried about potential caregiving needs and wanted to check on my condition. Having seen them the day before, I had nothing new to discuss, so I made do with casual conversation to get through the day. But then, they visited again the next day and the day after, bringing magazines and flowers to alleviate my boredom. Initially skeptical, by the time a discharge plan was in sight, I genuinely felt their concern and was sincerely happy. As the day of my discharge approached and I was diligently attending rehab, Elsa visited me after a long absence. I'm sorry, I couldn't come sooner. It's okay. You have your job and family. Don't worry too much about me. That's not something I can do. After all, your family too. Elsa's unwavering kindness healed my heart.
Actually, I've been given an estimated discharge date. And I'd been thinking about entering a facility with this opportunity. A facility? What for?
I explained to Elsa about my after effects and my previous considerations about moving into a care facility. Elsa seemed to be aware of my after effects but was shocked at the thought of me considering a facility. Then, she fell silent. I'm sorry for being quiet. But living in that house with my condition seems a bit difficult. And it's safer in a facility, right? Someone's always there.
That's true, but if you're just worried about living alone, why not live with us? Really? But what would James think?
He wouldn't oppose it.
But let's discuss it as a couple first, then I'll come back to you with a proposal. If you're okay with it, I'd love to live together."
Saying this, Elsa showed me the same lively smile she had as a child. To be honest, I'd love to live with them. But Elsa has her job and her own family. I worried that living together would burden Elsa and her husband, James. This concern made it difficult for me to accept their offer initially.
That's why I thought, hey, Elsa, what are you saying without asking? Leonard, why are you angry?
Leonard, standing at the entrance of the room, suddenly yelled and stormed in with heavy footsteps. Sherry looking displeased behind him.
Of course, I'm angry. What are you saying without consulting us? We've been visiting Mom every day.
Leonard said this, glaring at Elsa with furious eyes. But Elsa, unfazed by Leonard's temper, a trait not new to him, looked at him with disdain, asking, "So what?" Leonard, perhaps not liking Elsa's calm demeanor, grew even more irate.
That's why the right to live together is ours. The ungrateful one who went far away should stay out of this. Leonard, stop it. Moving away was unavoidable, so don't talk like that. Mom, stay out of this. Listen, Elsa. We've been preparing to live with Mom for a long time. So, the cohabitation is up to us. Got it?
The words about preparing for cohabitation surprised both Elsa and me deeply. Indeed, they had been visiting daily, but there had never been any talk of living together from Leonard and Sherry. Not even the date of my discharge had been inquired about.
Sherry, is that true?
Doubting Leonard's credibility, I instinctively asked his wife, Sherry. She smiled.
Of course. We can't possibly leave Mom alone in her current state.
And she responded. At that moment, living with Leonard and Sherry was almost forcefully decided. Although I was somewhat dissatisfied with not being able to choose my own way of life, at that time, I still believed in Leonard and Sherry's kindness and thought living together would be okay. However, I would come to regret this decision deeply. When I first visited Leonard's house after being discharged, I couldn't believe my eyes. The house, provided free of charge by a relative of Sherry's, was as old as ours. It had numerous steps throughout, with narrow hallways and entrances that were difficult to navigate. Moreover, the floors and hallways were cluttered with items, posing a constant tripping hazard. There were no handrails, and the toilet was cramped. Only the shower room was accessible, with no steps at the entrance. The changing area had been remodeled to stay warm even in the winter. Having many fearful memories associated with shower rooms, I felt relieved at first glance. But in practice, using a shower room without handrails was challenging with my right side paralysis. There were no accommodations like handrails or chairs in the changing area. They claimed to have prepared for cohabitation, but what exactly had they prepared? Despite my growing concerns, I tolerated the situation, thinking we were all adjusting to something new. But my patience only led to an ever-increasing burden. Once, I folded laundry to help Leonard and Sherry, who both worked. Seeing this, they somehow decided I should also help with other chores.
Clean the shower room. It'll be good rehabilitation.
From tomorrow, please take out the trash. And clean up because friends are coming over. It's good rehabilitation. Everything was pushed onto me under the guise of rehabilitation by the two, and I continued to endure silently. However, there's only so much someone with right-side paralysis can do. I finally spoke up, asking them to reduce the household chores. But Leonard only yelled,
It's rehabilitation, so stop complaining and just do it.
He simply refused to listen. Far from understanding, I was even assigned the most challenging task of cooking, constantly criticized for the meals not being tasty or quick enough. I never imagined that the two who were so kind to me during my hospital stay would change so drastically once we started living together. Initially, I thought we were just irritable due to adjusting to the new living situation, but as I was yelled at and berated daily, I began to believe it was my own actions and words that were irritating them. I felt increasingly cornered, and soon even the slightest noise scared me, leaving me in a constant state of unrest. How many more years would I have to endure these painful days? Thinking about the future made me wish I hadn't survived my hospitalization for the stroke. My spirit was completely broken. One day, more than half a year after moving in with Leonard and Sherry, we went to a nearby supermarket in the car. On the way back,
Hey! As a thank you for always doing the chores, how about we go for a little drive?
Leonard suddenly suggested. While Sherry nodded happily in the passenger seat, I felt incredibly disappointed. I knew a mountain of chores awaited me at home, and if we didn't return soon, I'd be yelled at and scolded again. But I no longer had the right to express my opinion. So I just quietly looked out the window. The car continued deeper into a deserted, dimly lit mountain road. Where were we heading? Just as I wondered this, the scenery suddenly brightened. We arrived at a desolate parking lot with only an old temporary toilet, located just behind a sheer cliff. It was like the last scene of a suspense drama. Were we stopping for a bathroom break? But the old temporary toilet was too cramped for me. I decided to wait in the car and remained seated, zoning out.
Hey! What are you spacing out for? We're here, get out. Eh? If it's for the toilet, I'll just wait here.
Despite my response, they didn't seem to hear me and silently dragged me out of the car. Their eyes looked at me as if they were staring at trash, cold and detached. Frozen with fear, I was unable to speak. I was forcibly taken to the railing at the edge of the cliff. Could they be planning to push me off? A chill similar to terror made my legs freeze, and I couldn't even stand as my body trembled. While looking down at me, they smirked maliciously. Then Sherry, picking up my cane that I had dropped, threw it off the cliff into the sea with great force.
Wait a minute. Really?
As it spiraled, my cane quickly sank into the sea below. I had no idea what was happening and just stared blankly at the edge of the cliff.
Happy birthday! It's almost your birthday, so here's a surprise gift. Awesome! It flew so far. Just like a former track and field athlete.
That's irrelevant. Well, we're going to head back first. Oh. Make sure you're back in time for dinner. If you need your cane, go get it. We won't help, though. Bye. With that, they drove off, laughing loudly. A birthday? A surprise? This was nothing more than malicious bullying. At that moment, my heart completely shattered. What on earth had I done to those two? Would it be easier just to throw myself off the cliff? I couldn't stop my tears, overwhelmed by my miserable situation. As I reached into my pouch to wipe away the tears, I saw the amulet Elsa had given me. That's right. I'll ask Elsa for help. I had always tried not to worry her, but at this moment, I felt I had to do something. If I could just contact Elsa, everything might be okay. With that thought, I tried to move to a place where there were people, putting strength into my legs. But without my cane, I couldn't stand or walk. I looked around for something to use as a cane, but there was nothing. I was at a loss again. When a car entered the parking lot. Desperately, I called out,
Please help me! Mom!
At almost the same time as my plea, I heard Elsa calling me. She jumped out of the car and rushed to embrace me.
Elsa? Is it really you? It's me. I'm so glad you're safe.
It felt surreal, as if I were seeing an illusion. The person I had wanted to see appearing out of nowhere seemed nothing short of a miracle. I touched Elsa's head, cheeks, shoulders, and hands repeatedly, affirming her presence.
Ah, it's really you. It's really Elsa.
Elsa nodded repeatedly and hugged me tightly. Then she and James helped me into their car.
We were going to see you, and your location showed up on the GPS. It hadn't moved for a while, so we got worried and made a detour. What happened?
Well, I was left behind at the cliff. I explained to Elsa and James how I ended up abandoned at the cliff. I also shared everything about living with Leonard and Sherry and how it made me feel. I regret not moving into a facility. I really do. Remembering it all brought tears to my eyes again. Elsa hugged me once more.
Mom, it's not your fault. I regret leaving you with Leonard. I won't forgive him this time.
It was the first time I saw Elsa, always so gentle, so angry. Elsa and her husband and I decided to confront Leonard and Sherry at their house. During the car ride, I asked Elsa some burning questions. Elsa, how did you know I was at that place? And you weren't planning to visit today, were you?
Actually, it was supposed to be a surprise for your upcoming birthday. I wanted to check on you since you seemed a bit down lately.
Elsa explained how the rescue came to be. In our family, it was a tradition to throw a surprise party on the closest holiday to someone's birthday. Though calling it a surprise at this point was a bit of a stretch, as the celebration and its details were kept secret. The birthday person would spend the whole day excited, wondering what was going to happen. This tradition had faded away after Leonard and Elsa moved out, and I had completely forgotten about it. Also, the reason I knew where you were is thanks to the amulet I gave you. It has a GPS feature, remember?
Did it? You did say to always carry it with me, but...
It seems I hadn't fully grasped Elsa's explanation about the modern features. However, keeping the promise to always have it with me likely saved my life. I felt gratitude towards Elsa, who always cared for me from afar. As we arrived at Leonard and Sherry's house, I could faintly hear their foolish laughter from inside. Elsa, angrier than before, approached the entrance and silently used the key I had given her to enter the house.
Whoa! Elsa! Why? You despicable man! You're no child of mine. Have some shame!
Elsa's fierce demeanor made everyone present back away in fear.
Hey, what do you think you're doing barging in like this? Anita isn't here right now. Anita? It can't be.
Leonard and Sherry turned pale as ghosts upon noticing me standing behind Elsa. Seeing them again brought back the fear I felt before, and I couldn't stand any longer. But James quickly led me to the living room and seated me in a chair. Elsa rushed over, concerned, asking if I was okay. It was astonishing how different siblings could be.
Leonard, what is this about? How could you cohabitate with our mother in such a terrible house? And leaving her behind earlier, what were you thinking? Stop yelling. As long as we get the money, it doesn't matter what happens to Mom. I thought making her work would speed up the inheritance, but she's useless.
Leonard's shocking statement left Elsa, James, and me speechless.
But you're still going to the hospital, right? Your time must be close. After all the trouble we've gone through, the insurance money is all ours.
Leonard boasted, while Sherry smugly agreed, their absurdity making me go beyond anger to sheer disbelief. But why did the topic of insurance money come up all of a sudden? When I asked Leonard about it,
When you asked for the hospital set, remember I said I needed some documents? While searching the dresser, I found the bank balance certificate and the insurance policy," he said.
Sherry then told me that she had heard caregiving relatives could inherit more in the event of an inheritance, which led them to forcefully proceed with cohabitation. Hearing this, I realized how foolishly mistaken I had been. Leonard and Sherry's kindness during my hospitalization wasn't out of love or concern, but for the money they would receive after my death.
"We thought we'd get the inheritance soon after hearing about your hospitalization, but then you talked about moving into a facility and Elsa wanting to live with you, so we panicked. And then you started helping around the house, acting all healthy. Aren't you supposed to be sick? When are we going to get the inheritance?"
Leonard spoke irritably, but his words were so dreadful that I was utterly dismayed. However, I saw this as an opportunity. I explained to Leonard that my hospitalization for the stroke was not life-threatening from the start, and my visits to the hospital were for monitoring, prevention of recurrence, and rehabilitation advice. So, unfortunately, I'm still quite healthy. And since the inheritance came up, let's make it clear now. I will give all the insurance money and the inheritance to Elsa and her husband.
What? Wait a minute. The inheritance is mine, isn't it?
Leonard's nonsensical response was infuriating. It seemed his plan was to assert that Elsa had no right to the inheritance because he, alone, took care of me and sorted my belongings. However, I'm not dying, and such a ludicrous plan could never materialize. Leonard's mind seemed only capable of conceiving ways to obtain money easily. There's a risk they might concoct another bizarre scheme to target my or my husband's inheritance. I made the most significant decision of my life. I understand your thoughts clearly. I am severing my parental ties with Leonard. Declaring this firmly, Leonard and Sherry turned pale again.
Cutting ties? Mom, you're joking, right? How are we supposed to repay our debts then? Exactly. Because you said a big sum was coming, I went and bought 3 designer bags, and even a new car. It's too late to say such things now. We're in trouble.
Astonishingly, Leonard and Sherry had counted on my insurance and inheritance to buy luxury brand bags and a high-class new car without having the funds. Furthermore, it was revealed they pretended to go to work during the day but were actually gambling.
We gambled a lot thinking we could cover the losses with the inheritance. Mom, if we're not getting the inheritance, lend us some money. Just $10,000 to start with.
Even after everything that happened, Leonard still had the audacity to ask for such absurd things, which I firmly rejected. I decided to take only what was necessary and return to our beloved family home. Once back, I arranged for a home care service. It was expensive, but they provided support with showering and household chores, and their regular visits gave me peace of mind. However, even after declaring our separation, Leonard and Sherry persistently visited, begging for money, disturbing any chance of a peaceful life. They chose times when the care service wasn't scheduled, shouting and banging on the door, their actions bordering on harassment. The situation was so dire that I reported them to the police multiple times. Yet, they didn't stop. In a final act of desperation, they broke into the house and began searching for my debit card stored in a drawer. When I called the police in a panic, they were caught in the act of attempted burglary and haven't shown themselves since. However, the fear that they might return lingers, preventing me from fully relaxing. One day, Elsa and her husband urgently said they had something to discuss and showed up unexpectedly. Upon arrival, they were unusually cautious, checking the entrance and garden and confirming the doors were locked. "Elsa? Why are you looking around so much? Did something happen?" "I got a call from a friend the day before yesterday.
They saw Leonard being chased by some intimidating people in the neighborhood.
Elsa hurried over, worried something might happen to me, and once again proposed that we live together.
James agrees, and we can't stand the thought of leaving you alone any longer. Please, come live with us. Mom. Elsa. I'm grateful to be with you and James, despite my condition.
With that, I agreed to their proposal. Elsa cried with joy, her tears bringing warmth and happiness to everyone present. After selling my house, I moved into Elsa and her husband's new home, which surprised me. The interior was fully accessible, and the room next to the entrance with large windows was meant for me. It had an adjustable bed and an ensuite bathroom, with handrails installed throughout the house. Even if you end up in a wheelchair, you can easily move in and out from this room, and the private bathroom allows you to take your time. This was all James's idea, Elsa explained with a smile, while James chuckled modestly beside her. I felt truly fortunate to live with this couple. Elsa is currently pregnant, and after the baby is born, she plans to become a full-time homemaker and is studying to prepare for any increased care needs. However, as long as I'm able, I want to contribute to the family. That's why I'm eagerly helping with Elsa's household chores. After my husband passed away, life was a series of hardships, but I've finally found a place of solace. I continue to dedicate myself to what we call rehabilitation through household chores, hoping to prolong this happiness. And for the sake of my soon-to-be-born grandchild, I'm determined to maintain my current condition for as long as possible and keep striving.